For a moment, the composed elegance seemed to be frozen. Lan Wangji, usually poised and soft-spoken, repeated in a rough voice, "We are married for this life. For this life, you have to be with me. With me." The repeated, almost meaningless words seemed hysterical, unprecedented, for someone from the Lan clan who prided themselves on their calm and refined demeanor. A vague pain surged in Wei Wuxian's heart, and he paused his movements. Lan Wangji reached out a hand, wanting to touch him. Wei Wuxian, as if suddenly realizing something, said in a seemingly casual tone, "All right, let's divorce." Lan Wangji's hand froze midway. Wei Wuxian continued in a rush, "Whether it's an amicable separation or a letter of divorce, up to you. I don't want to stay here any longer. I won't force you, second young Master Lan, to play the role of husband and wife with me anymore. I won't tarnish your pure and noble body or harm your pristine cultivation." Lan Wangji suddenly shook his head vigorously. "What are you saying?" Wei Wuxian replied. "You don't have to force yourself to like me or be with me because we are married." Lan Wangji kept shaking his head, seemingly unable to comprehend. The love between husband and wife? The natural order of heaven and humanity? The union by rights and law? "I have not forced myself," Wei Wuxian exclaimed fiercely. "I don't want anything about the natural order of heaven and humanity or the union by rights and law. I don't want any of it. Do you understand?" Lan Wangji said, "Wei Ying, I don't understand. You rejected me so harshly last night, yet earlier in that place you... What exactly—" Wei Wuxian coldly pushed him away, saying, "Forget it if you don't understand. Just continue being your refined and righteous gentleman. Anyway, it's always me making trouble. It's always me being unreasonable and unruly. I won't force you anymore. Do whatever you want. You don't have to avoid me and you don't have to please me. Why make things so exhausting? I'll leave, and everyone will find relief. After all, you're family." What nonsense prophecy. What marriage made in heaven, whether it's the Lan family or Lan Wangji. They both seem like victims of forced transactions, reluctantly taking in him, this inferior product that suddenly dropped from the sky. They grudgingly added his name to the family genealogy, bearing us silently till today. But even this inferior product had flesh and feelings, could get angry and rebel. In the place where he grew up, there were those who cared for and loved him. Since he was so unwelcome, since both sides were suffering from this forced union and mutual torment, why not just part ways and let both sides find happiness? Your family also doesn't like me. As he uttered these final words, Lan Wangji's icy expression rippled with a trace of emotion, and he lifted his gaze to look at Wei Wuxian. Wei Wuxian's eyes were red. His gaze turned to the side as if he was suppressing some emotion, and after putting on a brave front for so long, finally revealed a vulnerable side. "Wei Ying." Lan Wangji's expression shifted, and he grasped Wei Wuxian's hand. Wei Wuxian said in a deep voice, "I'm leaving. Let go." Lan Wangji shook his head and tightened his grip on Wei Wuxian's hand, speaking firmly word by word. "You cannot leave." Wei Wuxian turned his head and let out a chuckle, nodding to himself as if suddenly reminded of something amusing. The prophecy, right? He feigned a light-hearted tone. "Don't worry, second young Master Lan. If the prophecy really comes true, the first to suffer will be our Yunmeng Jiang clan, and my family will be the one exterminated. Your Lan clan is so powerful, so remarkable. You definitely don't need a small figure like me, Wei Ying. No matter what great catastrophe comes, I'm sure you'll stride through it." Lan Wangji continued to shake his head, looking at Wei Wuxian with determined eyes. "Since we have formed a bond, we shall never be separated." Wei Wuxian sneered again. "Lan Zhan, do you find it interesting to repeat the same thing over and over? I've said so much. Did you even hear a word of it?" Lan Wangji still shook his head. He heard it. Of course he heard it. Clearly and plainly, but he refused to let go. After a prolonged standoff, Wei Wuxian lowered his hand holding Suibian, seeming disheartened. He didn't want to fight Lan Wangji. With a sudden fling, he turned and went back inside. At night, Wei Wuxian, holding his belongings, slept on a cot in the partitioned area. In the middle of the night, Lan Wangji came to cover him with a blanket, only for Wei Wuxian to toss it onto the floor, right in front of him. Lan Wangji stood there for a long moment, before silently picking up the blanket, folding it neatly, and placing it within Wei Wuxian's reach. The next day, Lan Wangji stayed by his side, not leaving even for a moment, as if afraid that Wei Wuxian would disappear in the blink of an eye. In the past, Wei Wuxian might have understood this as Lan Wangji being reluctant to part with him and being touched by his stubbornness softening his heart. But at this very moment, he couldn't be sure how much of this plea to stay was a genuine expression from Lan Wangji's heart, and how much was merely due to the marital bond and the so-called fate that tied them together. Suddenly, he felt that he didn't understand Lan Wangji at all. He had never been able to see through Lan Wangji's heart. He did not possess the ability like Lan Qiren to decipher what Lan Wangji was truly thinking behind his impassive face and the nearly mechanical repetition of his words. But he didn't want to figure it out anymore. He felt that the answer was actually quite clear. He just didn't have the courage to face it. After calming down, he decided to see things through to the end. Seizing a rare opportunity, he finally escaped from Lan Wangji's vigilant watch, wandering aimlessly as he brewed a grand plan in his mind. He was certain that the Lan family would not let him go easily. Even if he could escape, he was still nominally Lan Wangji's partner, as this was written in the Lan clan's genealogy. Even if he returned to Yunmeng, the Gusu Lan clan would have ample justification to send someone to capture him, and he also had to consider whether Uncle Jiang and Jiang Chong would, as they did before, help the other side to bind him tightly. He had to completely remove this identity to truly be free. But no matter how much the Lan clan despised him or how much Lan Qiren disliked him, a divorce would still be a sensational event in the cultivation world. Moreover, they had only been married for a few months. If they divorced so soon, where would Lan Qiren and the clan's elders and relatives put their faces? Therefore, divorce was impossible, which left the option of a unilateral repudiation. If he were to commit an unforgivable crime, one that the Lan clan could not overlook and would have to enforce their family rules, what kind of act would force the Gusu Lan clan to require Lan Wangji to repudiate him? The 7 grounds for divorce. Wei Wuxian remembered reading about it in a once popular street booklet titled How to Marry into the Lan Clan. This set of folk laws was adopted by official statutes and could be upheld even when brought before local magistrates. Although the Gusu Lan clan was a prominent family in the cultivation world, they did not escape these customs and had incorporated these rules into their family regulations with some slight modifications. He rummaged through the depths of his Kongkun bag for a while and finally fished out the booklet. Squatting in a corner by the roadside, Wei Wuxian began to read through it hopefully. The author painstakingly compiled a collection of folk laws and combined them with the Lan clan's family precepts to caution those eager, hopeful girls who wished to marry into the Lan family against committing any unforgivable crimes. Each rule was thoroughly explained. Wei Wuxian, naturally, had no patience for such details and skimmed through the outlined summary quickly. The 7 grounds for divorce. The first ground is failing to obey parents. Wei Wuxian thought for a moment. He had only met Qing Hengjun once at the wedding, and the man remained in closed-door cultivation all year round. Even with his notorious mischievousness, it would be difficult to offend someone who was so out of reach. So, this rule could be passed. The second ground for divorce was being childless. Wei Wuxian was taken aback and glanced down at his own belly. No matter how extraordinary his talents were, or how passionately he and Lan Wangji engaged in intimate moments, it was physically impossible for him to produce even the slightest offspring. This was a biological limitation that everyone knew, and no one would use it against him. Therefore, this rule probably doesn't apply to men. The third ground for divorce was infidelity. Having illicit relations with others. This was something he wouldn't do, so this rule could be passed. The fourth ground for divorce was jealousy. Lan Wangji was pure and virtuous, and Wei Wuxian really couldn't find anyone to be jealous of, so this rule could be passed as well. The fifth ground for divorce was having a vile disease. For the time being, he didn't have the ability to develop any significant illnesses, and pretending to be sick would be somewhat troublesome. So for now, this rule could be passed